Tracy's been in the biz for 20 years. She's consulted with organizations on educational strategy and learning design. She advises associations on how to grow a reliably profitable and sustainable continuing education business that truly transforms learners. Tracy specializes in the intersection of learning science and technology. She's a thought leader, invited speaker, author, and DELP scholar. So you can see her LinkedIn. Please visit her there. And Tracy, you want to take it from here?
Yeah, thanks, John. Thanks everyone for being here. If you haven't already, go ahead and open your chat. I'm going to be looking for some networking around content happening there. I'm going to be asking you to respond throughout the presentation to a few questions, and there's a question in there right now. Go ahead and check that out. I'm interested to know what brought you here today. Interested to know what question or idea drove you to be present today, which I am so appreciative of that you're here with us. So let me know why you're here, and that'll help me customize the content throughout the presentation. I'm in the chat. So today we're talking about repurposing with a purpose. And to kick that off, let me just give you a brief tour of what we're going to cover today. We're going to talk about differentiating repurposing and purposing and why that matters to your bottom line. We're going to discover e-learning superpowers and how they're different from in-person learning. And we're going to try putting on a production mindset today. We're going to see how that transforms the experience that we offer. A bonus, if we get to it, depends on how robust our conversation is. I would really love to chat with you about insights on selecting the ideal speakers and topics for this kind of purposing. Are we ready to do that today? Are those some of the things that you're hoping to gain in this presentation? I hope. Awesome. Join me in the chat. All right, so let's get started. The first question I have for you, please join me in the chat box and let me know what comes to mind when you hear the word repurposing. So what does that mean to you? What does repurposing mean to your organization? Tell me more about that. You can't find the chat. The chat is another one of the panes on that right-hand side. Just have to turn the little caret to open it and you'll be able to find it there. So what does repurposing mean to you? I'm interested to know. And if you can't find the chat, feel free to pop your ideas in the question pane as well, since that one is open for you. What does repurposing mean to you and your organization? Scrolling, recycling content, yes, reusing content. Taking something that currently exists, using it again in another format, in another way. It's an opportunity to get the most out of the content that you have. Yes, using content in more than one platform. These are all very common ideas about what it means to repurpose content. Unfortunately, what it actually looks like and feels like is a little more like this. Repurposing is a common myth because conference content wasn't designed or produced to be an e-learning experience. Just because something is an asset, is a digital asset, doesn't mean it's good e-learning. So I'm going to challenge the current notion of repurposing conference content today and instead offer what we should be doing, purposing. So let's talk about what that means. So repurposing suggests that we can efficiently reuse components of education that have already been delivered, right? Which are past tense done, for additional meaningful learning opportunities. And the truth is we can't, not as is. Now just think about this for a moment. We would never welcome everyone in a conference into a session room and then click through an online e-learning course for everyone in the room to see. Would you ever do that? If you would, I want to know about it. Because we wouldn't take a course that was produced to be e-learning that allows the opportunity for learners to come and go and consume content over time and potentially some video and knowledge checks and maybe even storyline interactions. We would not set people in a room and click through that experience, would we? So why would we put a live learning session designed for an audience in a session room online? Captured content recordings are not good online learning opportunities, and here's why. Because meaningful, memorable, and measurable learning must be designed for the education channel delivery. Because captured content was designed for a learner in a live classroom learning space. And because we are statistically more likely to Google a subject than to sit through an hour-long video. Once we're removed from the classroom and in a virtual learning environment, we have different expectations for how we want to interact with content. Lecture sessions are not designed to be chunked. They're not designed to be accessible in an online learning environment. Think about it this way. You can't refold a crisp origami crane into a dragonfly. It won't work. Every fold is put into place to achieve a particular design. And it's the same with learning. So quick question for you, either in the chat box or in the question pane. When you're behind a screen, whether that's a desktop, as you are right now, most likely, a tablet, or a mobile device, how do you consume content? I'm looking for examples of how you consume content when you're behind a screen. Just thinking about yourself and what you do from day to day. Pop your ideas either in the chat or the questions pane. How do you consume content? You watch visuals, you might do some reading. How much reading? Figure out real world examples, how things apply. You kind of access digital content on an as needed basis. You scan quickly, yes. Prefer video over reading typically, that's true. Looking for bite-size reading and visuals. This is true. Another person said scanning, yes. Googling for questions, scanning for what fits a question. So you're curating content on your own is what you're doing. What else? You chat with peers. You grab little micro-learning components or bits or pieces of content. Read one more here. A lot of online articles, a lot of YouTube video type content. So true, because I mean, I don't see any of you saying that you go to your device to find and watch 60-minute to 90-minute videos of lectures. Is anyone doing that? Just cracking back the easy chair in the evening, picking up your tablet or your mobile phone and searching for 60 to 90-minute lectures? We do not do this. This is not how we consume digital content. Studies show we exhibit different behaviors with digital media. We skim text, just like you said. We digest short video or short media segments. We want to combine formal and informal learning opportunities. So there might be a course component aspect, but we also want to be able to discover additional content on our own, whether that's being sent to additional resources, articles, or searching for those things on our own. We just do that. We want to network around content. We want to chat about it. We want to share it. We want to co-create digital content, and we want to contribute to knowledge creation, to broader knowledge creation. Online, we want control of the experience. We expect that navigation and the production levels will be similar to the types of online media that we regularly consume. See how the two ideas of a captured 60 to 90-minute program and that don't quite gel together? Not the same. Not the same at all. So for example, when we're interacting with content differently across devices, we have different expectations for what we want to be able to do with it, and how we want to access it across devices, not just on a particular device. So if we're going to record content at our conferences, we have to capture it with the future mode of delivery in mind. Did you grab that? Because that's your learning environment. So for an example, the largest capture product that I produced included more than 650 hours of content. 650. Approximately 70 hours of credit in that product. And while there was some talking head video, a vast majority of the content was slide feed synced with audio. And I saw someone in the question pane say that that's something that they're doing right now as well, considering shifting away from that. Now, members asked for it, so we thought we needed to deliver it, right? We don't. Imagine looking through approximately 600 slide decks. When would you ever do that? When would your members ever do that? This is not how we learn on devices. Often the slide decks, if we're going to be honest, aren't even good a good way to learn when they're in the classroom session. We'll just, we won't raise our hands about that, but we know how these slide decks are, and then consuming them on a device, even more difficult. And the utilization stats from this product just confirmed as much. So if we're going to repurpose, it shouldn't be something like this. This was an awesome session at an Association North's event. We had amazing interaction during the session, and we came up with co-created some awesome ideas that we're going to take back and use in our programs. But the fact is that a recording of this session leaves our e-learner, our digital learner, kind of like a fly on the wall. It's passive. It's not a robust experience where this person is actually feeling excluded from the conversation. They're not able to interact with peers about these ideas, not able to ask the speaker about these ideas, not able to participate in the exercises that are happening in the room that are generating so much great peer produced content. I'm spending some time here on this idea because repurposing conference video in an LMS has become so common that we've convinced ourselves that it's a good use of resources. But it's some of the most expensively produced and underutilized content offered by associations. And I feel for you. I feel for my clients who have brought this notion forward that it's an easy and efficient way to put stuff in their LMS. But then they wonder why they're not getting traffic to their LMS site. Now, the rich experience at the conference is not a one-to-one translation to the screen. And our stakes are high, right? Let's just take a look at some of the stakes. When we think about the fact that digital learning is an imperative, and we're offering digital learning in an increasingly competitive continuing education marketplace. So just consider these ideas part of your environment that you're offering your continuing education products as informative for what we need to be doing. First, the balance of live and online learning is shifting. So in addition to watching what's happening in the association CE market, I also watch what's trending in corporate training, because corporate training represents a $160 billion industry in North America. No lie. And this is where some of our learners are drawing their budget to participate in our programs, correct? Corporate training represents approximately 60% of the continuing education market. And corporations, with their internal training, are rapidly increasing the number of online learning opportunities that support workforce development. Now, according to the Association for Talent Development State of the Industry report, they say that approximately 41% of learning hours are now delivered digitally in corporate training. 41%. Universities are also following suit, offering more blended learning and online learning options for students for both terminal degrees and for continuing education programs. So this is the environment that our CE is competing in. These offerings impact our learners' expectations of their experience with us. The second thing, on-demand video-based learning is becoming the standard. By 2020, we're told that video is expected to account for 82% of all consumer internet traffic. This is from the Cisco VNI forecast. YouTube also notes that education-related content traffic is reaching audiences in the millions right now, even more than puppy videos, even more than cat videos, believe it or not. Their education videos are reaching millions and millions of people. So the CE industry, continuing education industry trend watchers predict that mobile, micro, and on-demand content will become an expectation. Is that how you would describe your current conference capture? Probably not. Third, the conventions for learning are changing. We just have an honest conversation about that. The impact of technology on work and in leisure, to be honest, have radically shifted how adult learners expect to access and interact with content. So while accessing content online, our learners are expecting a native features experience on the device of choice. Think about that, which means that learning design must address the digital learning experience both aesthetically and functionally to remain competitive. And like I mentioned earlier, learners are going to Google first. Burson by Deloitte reports that modern learners facing rapid change in their industries, which are all of our industries, they feel empowered to seek out content because they need to upskill and reskill in the moment. And so the research shows that a majority of professionals are turning to the internet first. Online resources, courses, trusted sources that they find so they can find what they need when they need it. And so that's another thing that's different about our conference capture is it's just the ideas, the capsulated ideas are not accessible in a 60 to 90 minute program that's been recorded and placed online. So we've got maybe 1 to 2 good chances to make a good online learning impression, right? So let's talk about making a good impression. What does it take to make that impression? Well, the first thing to consider is the fact that repurposing does not live up to its promise of being efficient and effective. So let's consider an alternative right now. Let's explore what's involved in purposing, in thinking about how we design content for the mode of delivery. Now, we still have that original gut feeling that we had at the beginning of the webinar that we're producing so much good stuff at our conference that there's got to be a way that we can leverage that throughout the year. Well, you are right. There are ways. There are many things. And creating a content strategy is the foundation for better utilizing that content versus the copy paste. No more copy paste. We're not going to do that anymore. Now, I'm going to peel back the curtain and show you my shop in one way that I produce video for e-learning at conferences so that you can think about how you could try that idea on, how you could modify that idea for your situation to think about delivering that content in a new format. Are you ready for that? All right, that's what we're going to do. So what I want to hear from you right now is ideas about what are e-learning superpowers. When you think about crafting e-learning courses, when you have taken e-learning courses, what are e-learning's superpowers? Well, let me know your ideas about that. I'm interested to hear what you think, and then I'll let you know what I think about it. Looking for your answers in either the chat or the questions pane. What are e-learning superpowers? Scrolling down here. I love the activity. It reaches a broad audience. It transcends time and space. It can be engaging and interactive. It can offer reinforcement. Yes. We can offer bite-sized information, 100%. It's on demand, short and sweet, timely and up to date. High fives. That's an awesome answer. We can leverage video. Yes, we certainly can. We can learn things on the fly. Yeah, that point of need, so important. The same content to all. I like where you're going with that. We're going to chat about that in a second. It's accessible. Being able to review content multiple times. Yes, that's an awesome power of e-learning is being able to review content. It doesn't just blow right past you and then you don't know what you missed. Blended learning, yes, and is an awesome opportunity to partner in person and e-learning opportunities. An opportunity to collaborate with many others, more than could fit in a room, right? Absolutely, all great ideas. So here is a synopsis of some of the strengths and weaknesses, many of the things that you've already pointed out. E-learning allows us to fill knowledge gaps. When we're thinking about, especially level 1, level 2 e-learning, we're able to promote industry best practice uniformly. That goes to your idea about sharing the same idea with a broader audience. So if it's important to us, ethical practice in our industry, or sharing new guidelines, or sharing new quality indicators, or ensuring best practices are disseminated broadly, e-learning is a superhero in that regard. E-learning is amazing for initiating new practices, introducing the fundamentals of a new skill. It's awesome for upskilling. Like you were saying, at the point of need, when I need to grab some new content, some new information to try something new, polish a skill, e-learning is there for you. E-learning is your superhero. Self-service learning, modular learning, and learning pathways. So learning over time, smaller bits over time, different modalities, even mixing in-person and e-learning. That's an awesome strength that e-learning brings to the table. Some of the weaknesses of e-learning, for example, level 1 and level 2 e-learning, not as effective at competency-based learning. Competency-based learning requires a synchronous coaching component often. So level 3, like immersive simulation learning design, offered with artificial reality or virtual reality, can definitely handle it. I don't know a lot of associations that are in that space. If you are, I want to talk to you because that's super exciting. But if we're not able to have an immersive environment and receive in time coaching and feedback, e-learning, not the best choice. Not as effective at complex skill development, which again requires coaching and feedback and deliberate practice that's evaluated over intervals of time. So just needing that apprentice component. Now, if your e-learning is synchronous and allows apprentice component, that's a different situation. We're thinking mostly about asynchronous e-learning weaknesses. Now, level 1 and level 2 e-learning is not as effective also at developing complex judgment. Now, you can be challenged with content to improve skill, and you can have asynchronous problem-solving activities that assist you in developing complex judgment. But again, the simulation level requires a higher production level, more of that level 3, and again, a feedback component really helps us solidify best practices when we're improving our complex judgment, because sometimes we can absorb misunderstandings or misconceptions if we don't have that interaction component of another human. It's difficult for learners to sustain lengthy online learning experiences. This is something we've been talking about today. I know it hurts, but professionals, if they're not taking courses to earn a terminal degree like they are in higher ed, honestly, we can expect that if we are offering long videos, lengthy courses online, our completion rates are going to be really low. And finally, reading a large volume of text is really tough in e-learning. That's a weakness of e-learning because, as you mentioned earlier, when viewing content on a device, we do read, but typically when viewing content on a device, we're skimming. So studies are underscoring this for you. They indicate that print text, like as in on paper, is better for comprehension than screen text, because text on e-learning screens is skimmed. We don't digest it the same way. These scientific studies are watching the eyes, they're watching what they're consuming, they're testing for comprehension, and it's just a fact that while we can follow the best practices of visual design, depicting hierarchy and fostering content connections and contrasts with text online, large blocks of text are not suitable for online learning. So ebook courses are tough, really tough for your online learners. And of course, we also need to take into consideration generational preferences when we're preparing content for online learning accessible through different modalities, different screens. Curious now, as we move on to our next idea here, about producing e-learning at your conference. Is anyone right now producing e-learning at their conference? If you are, let me know what you got going on there. Reusing current content, okay. Are you thinking about the modality of delivery when you're producing e-learning at your conference? Are we just recycling? Scrolling down here. Thinking about it. Okay. All right. I gotcha. Good. You're in the right place. You're in the right place. I see a question here, like practice software. Tell me more what that means, Dana. Delivering face-to-face 8-hour seminar, and then we'll record the next month to reformat into 3 modules. So at least thinking about chunking down a little bit, still pretty large modules. Okay, so we're going to shift our mindset for a moment. This is perfect timing because several of you are thinking about how do we bridge this gap here from just pure recycling of capture video content to an amazing e-learning experience. So get your headphones on, shift our mindset, think like a producer of a program. Consider that you're planning a conference You're going to select a few sessions that you'd like to produce as e-learning as well. What considerations do we have to take to keep in mind, since we're not going to passively record and upload? We're not going to do that now. What does it require to put on a production mindset? I'm going to share with you my process. This is exactly what I do. So if I'm going to run a project like this, I start with a communication plan, because we are introducing some change here, aren't we? It's a different idea, purposing versus repurposing versus capturing and uploading. So we need to be on the same page. Everyone who's collaborating on the project needs to be on the same page, because here's the thing, there are no take twos at a live conference. you take it and then it's done. The moment is passed. So I create a staff plan. We coordinate details around the space, around the colors in the space, around the players that will be participating. Are they hiring an AV company? Are they bringing in a videographer? Who are the faculty we'll be working with? Who will be the on-site contacts for the session rooms that we're going to be in? Let's find out all of those details. What kind of equipment will the room have? All of that stuff. And then we create a faculty plan, and this one is more extensive. It's about the calls that we're going to have to introduce this idea and coach our faculty to help us produce a session that's awesome for the people in the room, but is also something that we can use to purpose some e-learning content later. We talk through a video treatment, and I'm going to show you what's included in that video treatment in a moment, so they can see the entire plan. It's entirely transparent, everything that's gonna happen, and how we're gonna capture the segments of their course in order to create e-learning. We walk through the work plan, so they know exactly what's expected when throughout our production timeline. They know exactly what their on-site support team will look like. They'll know I'll be there. They know staff will be there. They know there'll be AV people in the room. Sometimes associations have other experts who, like, from their education committee or other partners who will be part of the process. So it's important for them to know who their on-site support will be. And then it's important for our faculty to know that they're going to get an opportunity to review this online course once it's produced, so they can see what's happened, how it's transformed, how all of their efforts in preparation for that production piece have translated into an awesome e-learning experience. And then we create a plan for the AV company or the conference center union peeps who will be part of our production team on site, because we need to be in sync with them. I also like to bring my video guy if that works out, but clients have different preferences for who they want to be part of that AV team. But it's important that staff, the faculty, and whoever is going to be in charge of AV on site, that's sound and video capture, all on the same page, all on the same team. The second part is the learning design. So as part of the faculty's work plan, they send me their slides. They would send you, as their learning designer, their slides so that you can review them and make some learning plan recommendations so that you have both audiences in mind. You're thinking about the experience for the in-person audience. You're thinking about the experience for that future e-learning audience that's going to access this content versus via a screen. And we look for ways that we can segment the content. So I tend to look for 15-minute chunks at max, if at all possible. We don't want to be disruptive to the in-person session, but we want to be able to find meaningful breaks so that we can chunk the content and the experience for the e-learning course. We want to develop meaningful online learning interactions as well, out of the exercises that will happen in class. So if there's going to be an interaction in the session, we build a corollary in e-learning. We don't expect that our e-learning learners are just going to view what happened. We're going to take the same outcomes from the learning objectives, but we're going to craft them in online learning environment instead. So we have a conversation. Often I'll bring recommendations forward for, here are the tools that we have in our LMS and how we produce e-learning. What do you think about this option for how we could take this exercise and craft an online learning correlate. See? Thinking ahead toward how we're going to maximize the online learning environment. And then we cut all of the videos that the video components that depict the in-class exercises. Again, not wanting our e-learning audience to feel like a fly on the wall, to feel like this is such a passive experience. So we cut that right out of the video, and we maintain the parts of presentation. Yes, we'll keep some Q&A if it's conversational, but whenever there's like table talks, or we're not going to be able to hear people in the room picked up on the audio of the video recording, stuff like that, we'll cut it out of the final video. So this means that faculty often have to work with the learning team to develop some additional content, like maybe a case study, or maybe an exercise with some typical tidbits of feedback, or a downloadable resource that they can use, especially if the faculty has handouts in the session. But if they know that this is coming and this is part of their work plan, then they're often really eager to do this, to help us transition this content into an awesome online learning experience. The next phase is the video specifications. So I am going to show you a little bit about my video treatment in a moment, which we use to coordinate the faculty, the AV company, the production team, or my team. And what it does is it documents our commitments, and it documents who's doing what throughout this entire timeline. And you want to develop exact specifications for that video capture so that everyone knows what we need, what the role will be that, such as camera angles, such as file size, how you're going to transition the video files from the AV team to your team, all of that stuff. Lay out your video specifications. And then we produce the assets. It's a big day, conference day, right? On site, we're excited. We put on our production headset, we capture the video. I just let the camera run for the entire session. We break it up in post-production. Typically, I recommend shooting in 1 to 2 rooms so we don't have to move the camera equipment. Our AV teams like to tape that down. We don't want any tripping danger for our on-site attendees. So think about how you can coordinate the sessions that you would want to record in those 1 to 2 rooms. When I bring my own video guy, we set up at least a 3 camera angle shoot. And when the association prefers to use their own team, I ask for 2 angles, a wide and a close-up, and then I'll set up a additional camera kind of off to the side in the back that gives me an angle of the room, the speaker, and the screen. Sometimes we're able to use that as a 3rd angle and cut that in for some variety. But what that does, here's the secret, here's why I actually do it, is because it helps my video editor in post-production to know when to cut in the appropriate slide graphics. Cool, huh? So that if we're going to use slides and cut them in as graphics in post-production in the video, it knows exactly where they belong. When we're producing the assets, we of course want to meet the speakers before the session. We want to make sure that if they're wearing any jingly jangly jewelry, that we remove that they feel comfortable, they have water, they have mic tested, they're ready to rock and roll. And I also meet with them after the session because often, as you well know, there are surprises in the session. Maybe the faculty, because of a question in the room, takes a tangent. Something awesome happens that it was unanticipated. So it's an opportunity for us to debrief about how we're going to take our next steps, but also if there's something new or surprising that happened, how we can incorporate that goodness in our e-learning course. Always, always, always want to test the video before you leave the room. Make sure everything is golden. And then as part of producing the assets in post-production, that's when we edit in our intro and outro, super brief, how we brand our videos, tiny bit of music, makes it exciting and jazzy. Think about what lower thirds you might want to incorporate. That's some of your impact text. Maybe it's part of a quote, or it's the segments of the presentation, or for this particular component of a presentation, maybe it's the 5 steps in producing conference content into e-learning, those kinds of things. What screen graphics you want to cut in. You probably don't want all the slides, all of them probably not necessary, but which ones are important that the e-learner see? You want to ensure appropriate quality for your multiple screens so that you're optimizing for the device of choice. So, of course, I recommend not just one podium shot. We want to allow our speakers to have some personality, right? So it gives us some energy to the video when we're in post-production. And then finally, because e-learning, we build our courses. So we architect the course in the learning management system, upload the files, we add some screen text, we build our exercises and knowledge checks, and then we test the course with the faculty. We bring them in, let them see the experience. They might have some awesome ideas for how to improve some of the screen text and exercises now that they can see it and they can feel it and touch it and think about themselves in that learner seat, and then you're ready to launch. And then, of course, because e-learning, now the course moves into our e-learning maintenance queue, which means because online learning content expires, and because we want to have a review cycle that we're continuing to look at our courses, whether they need to be refreshed or retired, we have to put them into produced courses into our development plan so that they will be reviewed. All right, now I'm going to take a breath and pause. I'm interested to know if you can see yourself in this situation. Could you produce learning like this? Could you modify these ideas and think about how you might transition a workshop or a highly attended session at your conference or regional event, and then transition it in such a way as this for online learning? So one Susan says, I could if I had a really long time and a full-time staff. It doesn't take as long as you think. A lot of what's happening here is coordination. It's just a different level of coordination than what we're currently doing. Instead of just putting a camera in the room, we're thinking about that end experience. Elizabeth says, this is exciting and can see us doing this as well. Would require some more resources. Maybe you could take some smaller steps before going all the way and pilot. We love this word, pilot, but it's really entrepreneurial to try a smaller idea before going big with it. Can you talk additionally about budget concerns in doing this? Speakers, crew, post-production, etc. Yeah, let's talk about that. And we'll continue to talk about that on the next slide as well. But as far as speakers, we have used speakers that were already on the conference slate. They were selected to speak. They had submitted a call for proposal. They were selected, and then the association approached a selection of them for producing their courses for online learning later. And so they were already anticipating being speakers, they were already anticipating preparing materials, and this was an additional ask, but we were very transparent about what that would mean for them, what kind of support that they would have. We'd be having conversation about their slides, we'd be segmenting their course, we'd be video recording, and we might ask them to help us with some additional exercises or handouts. And the ones that worked with us were resounding yes hand raisers, and they were excited to do it. So there was no additional budget money required for that. We often will use the AV team that's already in place, and so while you could hire additional videographers or you could hire learning designer to help you with that, these are resources that you're already using in conjunction with your conference, and can be incorporated. Video capture can be incorporated into your contract. So it just depends on how far in advance you're considering converting in-person sessions to e-learning. Let's move on to the video production tool. So I call it a video production treatment, and this is really our game plan. It's our game plan document that's broken up into 3 sections so that everyone knows the entire process, complete transparency. Everyone knows what their role is in making this an awesome in-person and e-learning experience. So I'm giving it all away here. These are all the sections that are in my template. First, in pre-production, I just give an overview of the project at hand. And so everyone knows what our objectives are. Everyone knows what we're doing here together, what we want to accomplish together. And then I prepare a checklist for the speakers. Things like the room colors are gray, yellow, and cream. And you don't want to wear patterns, busy patterns, don't want to wear jangly jewelry. Let's think about whether you want to wear glasses or contacts, all of those things. All of those things you can pull off the internet, best practices for speakers preparing to be video recorded. You'll want to wear something that you can clip your mic on, all of that stuff. You probably already have a list of those things somewhere. And we just want to make sure our speakers feel 100% prepared and comfortable, so they have all of this information in advance. The second section is a bigger section, and it's about the production. So it's about everything that's going to happen on site. So we talk about the AV requirements. We're going to need lav mics. We're going to need 2 cameras, one at a closer angle and one at a wider angle. All of those things. Who the on-site AV contact will be. We exchange cell phone numbers so that we can be in contact with one another. We want to know what the floor plan of the space looks like, so that we know where we can set those cameras. We can plan in advance, so there's not a lot of scrappiness at the last minute. It's very thoughtful. We put together a sample shot list. So what are some of the things, knowing what's going to happen in this presentation, because we've seen the slides, what are some of the things we want to be sure we're capturing? If there are some of those things we can prepare our AV team with in advance, awesome. If there's, nothing special required, also awesome. We just communicate that. And then I have a production checklist for me. You would have a production checklist for you as a producer, making sure that if you do have a third camera in the back, that you press record, so that you are allowing your in post-production, that video editor, to see where the slides are coming into play during the presentation, that things that you want to remember. Because when you're in the moment, your brain is in a million places if you've ever produced a conference before. So just keeping right in front of you all of your to-do list items so that you feel, so that you're following your process. While I'm sitting in the room, while a session is being recorded, something else I do is I take notes about things that could become impact text later in the lower thirds, and I take note of things that the speaker said that the room really responded to. I take notes about questions that audience members asked that might not be heard on the video recording, that could become part of an exercise or a reflection in the e-learning course. So I take the opportunity to making sure that recording is happening, we don't have mic pops and all that, but just noticing what's happening in the room and taking some notes that will be useful for us later when we're in post-production. That's my insider tip for you. The next part of your video production treatment is post. So what's going to happen once we've collected all of this awesome video footage? What are we going to do with it to make it awesome e-learning? Well, it's important that everyone knows what our timeline is. I like to prepare a timeline for the entire process. So from the time we engage the speakers to what's going to happen on site to what happens after the conference. We're going to audit the video. We're going to edit the video, when we're going to be crafting the courses in the LMS, when we anticipate launching those courses. So our timeline is right in front of everybody and everyone's accountable. In post-production, I will note some cuts. So after, when we're reviewing the video, there are certain things, places you might want to cut to a different angle. Just note those for your video editor, because another insider tip, the more information you give to your video editor, the less time they spend making guesses about what you want, saves you money. So if you can spend some time with that footage, being specific about where you might want some cuts, what type of content you want on the screen for impact text, what those speakers' names and credentials are, all of that kind of stuff, and it's just right there for that video editor person. If you don't have one on staff, saves you time and money, saves you time, their time, and saves you money. So that's an insider tip for you. If there are graphics outside of the PowerPoint deck that you want shared in the presentation, those are things that you'll want to, of course, collect and offer to your video editor. And then that intro and outro piece, is that something that exists? Do you need to share your branding requirements with the video editor in order to create that for you? Give them some specifications around that. And something else I love to do is have a file review and transfer plan. These are valuable files for us, people. And we want to know when they're changing hands and which hands are touching them. And so we know, it's just important to know that the AV company is turning over the files at this date to this person, which will then edit and transfer to this person in these secure manners. Just make sure that you're specific about that happening, because this is your valuable content. These are your valuable assets. So have a plan for that. Have a plan for who's going to be reviewing the materials, have a plan for how those materials will be safely and securely transferred. So now let's chat again. More questions about the budget you might have. And again, can you see yourself piloting something like this? I'm going to take a peek at your questions again. Susan says, we capture over 100 lectures at our conference. That's a lot, Susan. So you probably won't select all of those to be e-learning courses, especially if they're in a lecture format. Some of those, though, could be candidates for this, especially if you have the opportunity to influence how the presentation is going to be delivered. Maybe not straight lecture, how we can chunk it up a little bit so that perhaps for some of those sessions, you're just pulling out a portion and you're not even presenting the entire course. Really depends on your content. If you have any TED Talk formatted sessions, those convert amazingly for LMS content as well. Let's see, what else we have in here? Elizabeth says, like one session, start to finish, then reproduce for a few next time. They can become SOP. Tell me more about that, Elizabeth. So here's something else too. If you're thinking about producing conference content, transitioning to e-learning content, sometimes something sneaky we can do is have a room at our conference center away from everything, where we have a green screen, where we can ask speakers to comment on their sessions. So they would spend 3 to 5 minutes on one nugget, or commenting after a session, one of the points in the presentation that the room really responded to that we can then share more broadly. So you're able to, if you have 100 sessions, grab 50 of those faculty, pull them into this video room, have them share one nugget, videotape that, use that as awesome content, maybe not to build a course, but to promote your event or to share over the coming year, or so many things, so many ways that you can use that. Let's see. What do you mean TED Talk formatted? Great question. So sometimes at our events, we might have an Ignite formatted session, right, with those short presentations. I've also seen conferences who kind of pull in a modified TED Talk format. So again, the presentations are shorter. They're no longer than 10 minutes typically. The slides are very visual. There's no podium, so our speaker can move and have some personality. And they're presenting a key point or a challenge, or something that's breaking in the industry, some kind of hot topic. And so it's not a full-length session, it's a session full of TED Talk type presentations. And if you're capturing those make awesome nugget-sized learning opportunities for your video library, or sometimes, ooh, here's another insider tip. You can use one of those, especially if it's a hot topic that maybe is controversial, maybe there's some nuanced conversation that can happen around it, that becomes a focal point that then you can drive a community conversation around, so in your online community, or you can add additional e-learning components to create an interesting online learning experience. So lots of things you can do with that as well. Okay, so what else? What other questions? Anyone else see themselves maybe trying something like this? Thinking about how to reposition conference content to be an awesome e-learning experience? Would love to hear your thoughts about that as we roll into our next conversation as well. So when thinking about managing, coordinating a process like this, I bet you immediately comes to mind speakers that would not work out in a situation like this, and then speakers that might. So let's chat about what qualities are we looking for, do we need in selecting speakers and topics to do this? Do you have some ideas around that? I'd love to hear what your ideas are. Beth says she loves the green screen idea. Yes, it's so easy, and you can capture so much rich content, Beth. For a first foray into this, how many sessions would you suggest doing? Jennifer asks. Depends on staff capacity and budget. But if you could get 5 e-learning courses from a conference, don't you think that's a huge win? 3 to 5 is a great starting place so that you can learn from working with different sets of faculty. You can learn from working with different types of content, of how you can improve your processes going forward without making it an overwhelming project. That's what I would recommend. And then you end up with 3 to 5 e-learning courses at the end of the process that you can choose when you launch over time in order to continue to draw that awesome excitement and energy around your online learning program. So what qualities do you think you would need in a speaker in order to pull off something like this? Interested in your thoughts about that. They would definitely have to be flexible. They would have to be someone who would be excited about trying something new, right? You're looking for speakers that are hand raisers, that, yes, that have an energetic presentation style, because we don't want the monotone lecture. That's still not going to transfer to great e-learning, even if we do segment it and chop it up a little bit. They have to be able to change on the fly. Yeah, adaptable, right, to the situation, and you know, engaging with their audience around the content is also something that I look for. They have to be able to change content based on questions. Yep, just what I was about to say is that it's important that there's someone that's actually engaging with their audience, because that face and that body energy transitions better to online video as well. They definitely need to be topical experts for sure, because that not only makes it a rich experience in the room, but it's also going to attract people to purchase that online course as well, that expert allure. They need to be willing to work with technology and be on video for sure. They have to be willing to allow us to record them, to collaborate with us and our production team to make an awesome experience for both in-person and online learning experience. They have to be willing to be part of the process, Melissa says, and add to the session after the fact. True. So that's part of the ask on the front end, is that based on your presentation, some of these things will transfer into the e-learning course, but we might need to ask you to work with us in developing an exercise or an activity, or if it's required for accreditation, helping us develop some exam questions, right? And maybe willing to run a chat online later. Ooh, I like this idea. I like where you're going. That definitely, you could put that in as part of your ask as well. Awesome, great ideas. Yes, for sure. We need to identify speakers who are flexible. They're willing to collaborate and work with us. They're hand raisers that want to try new things and are interested in producing an online learning experience that's really engaging and an awesome experience for our learners, and willing to try new things, right? Not so stuck in their way they typically do things. They're willing to collaborate with us. So those collaborative faculty peeps are the ones that we really want to target. Well, since you are such an engaged and great group, I'm going to give you a couple more insider tips. So when we're thinking about extending the value of the content we're preparing for our conference, think outside of video as well. Think about all the different ways you can take what's happening at your event and you can extend the value of it the entire year long. It starts with your purpose for that content. Do you want to promote? You want to promote the event or an experience, your organization, membership, education at large? Do you want to extend the learning? Awesome, love that, everything about that. Or do you want to create something interesting and new based on what's happening at your conference, but then has a new and different life afterward? So if you want to promote the event or there's something that you want to promote, consider having volunteers, use committee members, subcommittee members to write blogs. People of different generations, people of different viewpoints. Consider creating vlogs, video blogs around what's happening at your conference. Consider having a podcast studio in a walkway area, a big area of your conference to produce podcasts that can then be offered over time, over the year. Consider creating a convention news, not just in an e-news, but video also. It could be live streamed. Consider how you could coordinate all of the amazing brains that are there in your green screen studio for some hot topics commentary. So panel experts from a big well-attended session or content leaders that you know have differing or opposing point of views, get them in front of the video camera, talk about one topic, get their commentary on it. And of course, hallway nugget testimonials are great for promoting the experience. If you want to extend your event, think about adding hybrid components. Think about how you can leverage transformational tools that your speakers are offering during their sessions to your online learning portfolio, that members only come and get your amazing tools in order to improve your practice. Consider pre and post event learning experiences. Develop a learning pathway with your event, with an online learning experience that leads to this in-person experience, and follow it up with something like a webinar, something like this. Consider conducting expert interviews from your highest attended sessions and then offering those later. Or crowdsourcing insights, something that Elliot Mazie does with his learning conference. He will collect insights from attendees on a couple different topics, create an ebook, sends it back out to the community. Super valuable resource. And then if you want to create something new, think about whether you'd like to take your Innovation Award winners and ask them to present a webinar. Not a repeat of their presentation, but something new about maybe how they came up with the idea or challenges in their experience or something new that extends that conversation but also encourages others to apply for your award program. That green screen production room, maximize your experts' time, experts that come to your conference to grab some awesome nuggets there. And then think about pairing a speaker with an instructional designer to create a digital first e-learning experience. So maybe not something that you capture on site, but that you then work with them later to create something that's digital first versus purposed, which was what we're talking about today. Interested in any of your questions as we're coming up to the end of our presentation today. I've loved the interaction that you've had with me. Which of these ideas speak to you, and what other questions do you have that I can answer for you before we say goodbye today? Michelle says, I think it would be great to create a work group that curates other items from your activity, such as articles and tools. 100%, and super easy to do. Again, utilizing what's already being produced just requires some coordination. Thanks, Elizabeth. I appreciate it. And I do believe that the recording will be available for you later after the broadcast. Any other questions? If not, and if they happen later, also okay. You could reach out to me with any of your questions. Feel free to interact with me about what you've learned today, what questions you might still have about modifying these ideas for your conference and your e-learning programs. I've so appreciated that you've been with us here today. Thank you again.
Tracy, great stuff. I think that more and more associations are really considering how to use their subject matter experts at conferences to create content, and you've really summarized the goal very, very well. So we truly hope more associations do what you say they should do. Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy, and thank you for everyone who attended the webinar today. I will be sending up a follow-up email with that recorded webinar and other resources that would be helpful to you. So thank you again and have a great day.